Now, Michael Steele, if you've been following, obviously a few weeks ago was elected chairman of the Republican National Committee. I should note, just as an aside, something for us to be proud of here in Wisconsin, Reince Priebus, our state chairman, I will say did more than any person in America was responsible for Michael Steele being elected chairman of the RNC. That's remarkable. He's our chairman. He's someone who's just been in office a short amount of time. He single-handedly, well, not single-handedly, Michael did single-handedly, but Reince went around with Michael Steele to all the undecided. He flew around on Terry Mary Kohler's plane, flew around this country to all the undecided or wavering RNC members, and really was the driving force behind Steele getting elected, which I think, as an aside, is extremely powerful, because as much as Mike Duncan was a good administrator and a decent guy, at a time when we don't have a president nor a majority leader in the House or the Senate out front, we need someone who's a spokesperson for the party who can carry that message to the American people, and I think that's exactly what we've got from Michael Steele. And we owe a great debt of gratitude to Reince Priebus for making that possible. But that aside, Michael Steele was still the GOPEC chairman at that time, and he asked me to come down to their meeting. So I spoke there, a couple different speakers, the Attorney General for Virginia, who's going to run for governor this November, then the Secretary of State from Michigan, who's one of a handful of candidates running for governor in Michigan, and then I spoke. Well, when the Secretary of State got up, the AG had given a great speech, and she got up, and it was okay. Didn't overwhelm us, but it was okay. Well, she got up at the end, and remember, this was a week after the election, and she looked at this crowd, she said, you know, we really suffered a traumatic defeat last week. Maybe it is time for us to broaden the tent and change our message. GOPEC, if you're not familiar, is a group that tries to organize and support conservatives running for office. So that went over like a lead balloon. So I got up, got introduced, had to tell people a little bit about who I was and what I was doing. Then I got to the end, and she was still seated there, so I really didn't want to go after her specifically. So I said, you know, a lot of pundits have said since the election that conservatives, we need to change our message. And I just want to tell you, I fundamentally disagree with that premise. I don't think there's anything wrong with our message. I think it's our messenger. And as much as I'm proud to say that I think John McCain is a great American, he's a war hero, I don't believe that John McCain was the right messenger last fall. And I think it's largely because he didn't have a message he believed in. If you went out, asked people all around this hall or anywhere else in America today, certainly in this part of the state or anywhere around the state of Wisconsin or anywhere in America, what John McCain was going to do to get the economy going again, I doubt that most people could tell you. Because again, I don't know that he knew, or at least didn't know entirely. That's not a way to win an election, but more importantly, that's not a way to govern, at least to govern correctly. We've got a better contrast to that. We talk about dinners like tonight being Lincoln Day dinners, and of course Abraham Lincoln was not only our first Republican president, but one of the greatest Republican or not of all time. But another guy whose birthday happened to be a week before, on February 6th, not on President's Day. People forget that Lincoln and Washington weren't both born on President's Day. Washington was born on the 22nd, Lincoln was born on the 12th, and the other great president in this month was Ronald Reagan on February 6th. But Ronald Reagan gave us a great lesson for what we need to do in times like this. Remember back 30 years ago, it's hard to believe, but 30 years ago, Jimmy Carter was talking about the malaise that America was in. He was talking about the funk that we were in. The fact that the economy was down, we were in a recession, oil was out of control, we had hostages over in Iran, we had all sorts of troubles, and Ronald Reagan came in and said, we can do better. We can believe in America again. We can put this country on the right track. And when he came in, even with a split Congress, even with Tip O'Neill in charge of the House of Representatives, Ronald Reagan came in and pushed an aggressive plan to cut taxes and fuel the economy. He did it in 81 through 83. And when those tax cuts were fully enacted in 83, we had from 1983 through 1990 the largest peacetime economic boom in American history. More than 20 million jobs, more than 5 million new businesses were built during that time period. And that's because we had a president who believed in a message and was the right messenger to carry that to the American people. Now more than ever, we need messengers willing to carry that message. And that's true not just nationally, that's true right here in Wisconsin. You know, you put that in Congress. I said, this has been an interesting week for me because on Monday, I gave our State of the County address at the Cyrus International, one of the world's largest mining equipment manufacturers, and they're right here on the other side of the state, South Milwaukee. They made a commitment last year with our help to add more than 500 square thousand feet in their plant and to nearly double the size of their workforce to 1,400 people. And they did it all the way back to 1853 when they got the first tax credits to move from Bucyrus, Ohio to South Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They did it again over the last several years, in both cases because we gave them tax incentives to stay and grow in our community and in our state. They understand the importance of that. So at that site, we gave our State of the County address and not only talked about our county, but talked about our state. And we made a novel proposition. I said for all the federal stimulus money that's out there, for the money that the county might be eligible for, and the money that the state might be eligible for, I said let's do something novel with that. Let's actually stimulate the economy. Instead of investing it in the projects that might take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road to actually happen, let's put it into economy today. And so what we propose most boldly, which would affect all of you if it were to be enacted, I propose taking the nearly $3.5 billion that the state of Wisconsin is eligible for under the so-called stimulus bill and stimulate the economy by suspending the sales tax as of March 1st through the remainder of 2009. Now think about that. Now you all know very, very much so what happens every year in Minnesota when about 2 weeks before Christmas, sounds like Christmas, 2 weeks before school, when the sales tax is suspended and people run across the St. Croix and go over to the Mall of America or other places and take advantage of that. Imagine what would happen if not for 2 weeks, but for the rest of the year. Wisconsin was the only state in the Midwest that said, we don't have a sales tax. Not just for retail sales, for cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, for home builders. Think about that. An average home builder that builds a home estimating a cost about $250,000 statewide for a new home construction would save more than $5,000 in sales tax collections. Somebody selling a Mack truck for a construction company would save over $8,000 in the sales tax. Imagine the impact that that could have on the state of Wisconsin immediately. Not a year or two down the road, but right away. As of March 1st, we suspended it. So we said, here is our vision, along with some other economic development projects and some tax incentives for businesses that actually directly create jobs, not just big jobs in $500 or $1,000 quantities, but 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 at a time, because that's how the economy is going to recover. It's going to come from small, mid-sized businesses bringing jobs back to the state, back to this country. Imagine what could happen if we had that kind of hope and optimism for the future. In contrast, the next day, what did our governor give us? He gave us doom and gloom. He gave us saying, we're going to take, and instead of inspiring ways to actually fuel the economy with that stimulus money, he said, I'm going to take $2.5 billion and just plug it into that budget deficit. I'm going to fill a hole, or he said, I'm going to fill a hole that he was largely responsible for creating. Wisconsin has the largest deficit we've ever had, $5.75 billion, the fourth largest deficit in the country. And for years, Jim Doyle blamed other people. In fact, remember before the last election, he blamed Scott McCown for a $3.2 billion budget deficit. In fact, he literally ran commercials that claimed that he had solved it. Well, I saved those commercials because I'm going to remind people in this state that if he balanced it, which I don't think he did, but if he balanced it, take him at his word, then that means this $5.75 billion budget is nobody but his. Because it can't be anything else if he said he balanced it before. The fact of the matter is, words have consequences and even more so do actions. This governor, even before the financial meltdown last fall, as of June 30th, the end of our fiscal year, if you look at the state's financial report, the CAFR that people like the mayor and I have to report, local governments as well, he had the largest structural deficit in state history. You use generally accepted accounting principles, what's commonly referred to as GAAP. They had the largest in state history, 3 times what it was in the year 2000. And if you measure it per capita, no state in the union had a larger structural deficit than Wisconsin. That's why you can say all you want, but when the economy took a dive last fall, we were poised to be in the worst of all conditions because Jim Doyle failed the test of leadership and didn't put the state on the right track. We can do better than that.